You set the gold standard for your business. Your website should do the same. Wix puts you at the helm so you can enjoy the creative freedom of designing your site just the way you want. Want someone to bounce your ideas off? Talk with AI to create a beautiful site together. Whatever your business, manage it from one place and tie it all together with a personalized domain name. Gear up for success with a brand that says you best. You can do it yourself on Wix.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
Hello one, hello all. Welcome to another episode of this podcast in which we obsess over the details in punk, hardcore, emo, metal, indie rock, whatever it is, as long as it's of the DIY variety. And you know what I'm talking about. You've been those small, sweaty rooms and just having your life changed in an irrevocable way. And that's, I know, what many of our experiences is, and that's what I talk to guests about. And today, of course, is no exception because I would be breaking the rules, and that is not cool. You don't break rules unless there's a good reason to. Anyways, I have Mark Rose from Spitalfield, classic Victory Records band from the early zeros, aughts, I guess it were. When I say classic, like, you know, the Taking Back Sunday era. This band definitely existed in that milieu, and they just released a new EP called Play Plus Record. It's really, really good. If you like their output, I can guarantee you will like this new EP. I truthfully was late to the band. I kind of wrote them off for the first couple of records, and it wasn't until they released their last full length on Victory, which I'm totally blanking on the name of it right now. Better Than Knowing Where You Are. That is what it was called. And that record really captured my attention. And Mark is a hustler. He's been doing his own solo stuff for many years. He also launched the platform Downright, which, if you are not familiar, is a really, really cool way for you to get songs written by some of your favorite musicians. I know I personally have procured the services from that. Many years ago, I had Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids write a little song for my wife and I's anniversary. And it's like, that's the sort of stuff that you're able to dip in and do. And Mark Rose is one of the founders of that. So anyways, great dude, great chat. He blew my mind with some of the connections within the Chicago music scene and just like the way that he started going to shows. And let me put it this way. I never thought we'd really be talking about Charles Bronson and Weekend Nachos, but we absolutely did. And it's great. So ways you can support the show. You can always, of course, email me, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. That's the number 100. I love to receive feedback, questions, concerns, future guest ideas, whatever the case may be. Love to hear that from you. You can also leave a rating and review for absolutely $0 on the Apple Podcast Store, or simply leave a rating on Spotify. All of those things help the algorithm. I also publish these episodes to YouTube because, you know, people like to listen to stuff on YouTube, and that's great. So want to make sure it's available for wherever people want to listen and or view. Also, weekly recommendations. I've been doing this for the better part of a year, year and a half, almost 2 years. A link in the show notes will hit you with a playlist that I've been adding all this music to. Hopefully something piques your interest there. And if not, then that's totally fine. But that is the best way that you can learn about new music. It's usually from friends. Like, of course, the algorithm and other ways that stuff can get recommended to you is cool. But when you hear it from friends or trusted sources, that is really the best way. So I have to recommend the surprise new Advent EP called God Is the End. If you like your metalcore, like you like Turmoil, late 90s, mid 90s stuff, you will absolutely love Advent. It's dudes from Beloved, and if you haven't paid attention to any of their other output, I highly suggest you listen to that. But this new EP is exceptional. They also enlist some of their friends from the North Carolina scene, whether it's Inns of Sanity or A Knife in the Dark. It's just really cool to see all of this North Carolina love and all of these bands that exist in this, North Carolina metalcore tradition. It's really, really cool. The EP, like, it's 4 songs and it's over and done with. It's awesome. Really, really recommend that. So got to check that out. So yeah, let's talk to Mark Rose from Spitalfield right now. I, like many, discovered Spitalfield when you guys put out the full length on Victory. And truthfully, it was one of those times where I was like, it was okay for me. Like, it didn't capture my attention in a way that many other bands of your genre were kind of doing. But this is probably an unexpected place for me to mention this to you, but your last full length, The Only Thing That Matters, that song had and has a stranglehold on me, where it's like anytime I hear that, I feel like I'm like floating in outer space. The song is beautiful, and it was like basically it pulled everything that Spitalfield had done into a song, and then I like at that point I understood the band. The reason I bring all of that up is the fact that I'm sure you've had experiences where you interact with music and for one reason or another, it doesn't grab you, but then something else later on down the line kind of pulls you in, and that can make more sense for you where the artist is coming from. Is anything of what I'm saying kind of, landing with you in regards to the fact that, oh yes, like it's never too late to the party to, join in on a band's music?
Oh, totally. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think that's cool. I mean, to be honest, I think there's different like times and places when music hits you that make you feel a certain way or not a certain way, and to be able to have something kind of hit you at the right time in the right place and then go back and start to feel the other stuff that it didn't catch you the first time around. I think that's special, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to be an open book to all things at all times, and the person you are when you hear something for the first time versus later in life. Like, not that that was a long time between those records, but like, you know what I'm saying. It's like I think about how my first introduction to music really was like what my parents were listening to, and like being in the minivan, to and from soccer practice or whatever, taking piano lessons, and a lot of that music, like that was the music I knew, and therefore I liked it. But once I started discovering my own music in middle school, getting into like alternative rock and stuff, my initial reaction was to like push that stuff away, right? And then as I got older and through college and into doing music full time and stuff, I revisited a lot of the stuff I grew up listening to, and it all clicked and it all made sense. So I know exactly what you're talking about, even though the Spitalfield one is not quite as extreme as that.
Yeah. And truthfully, it's so I like how you viewed it through that prism as well, because it does. And I'm sure you can identify with this as well. When you are a kid and you are developing your identity and music becomes a big part of it, you have to travel down specific lanes. Like you have to be, a punk kid, a hardcore kid, an indie rock kid or whatever. And you then put blinders on where you're just like, I'm not paying attention to any of this music because all this stuff sucks unless it, has stage dives or whatever. And then it only happens later on in life where you're just like, you know what? Paul McCartney's kind of a good songwriter.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And like I have such a like wide range of music that I truly love, and I have like, so many different types of writers, songwriters, and then bands that I love that, to me it's like I have within all these genres, I kind of have the bar that's set, and then when I try to open myself up to new music, I'm like, do I like it as much as that or more than that? If not, then I don't care. And that's like that's tough, right? It's tough to let new music into your world when you've been listening to it for 30, 35, 40 years, right? So it is truly a challenge, I think, to hear new music, and to carve out room for it in your brain and in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that jumping off point with music, like you said, just existing in your life as you were, being a kid in elementary school, and it sounds like you were, having a suburban experience of, playing sports, obviously going to school like every kid should do. What kind of kid would you typify yourself being as you were growing up? Were you just kind of soaking in all of the experiences that you were being shown, or did you, fully go into sports, fully go into school? Like, what was your lane?
Well, I think my elementary era can best be described as having read the full Jurassic Park cover to cover as quickly as possible, so that I was then allowed to see the movie. So I think my parents made a mistake with that, because I think that by them telling me I need to read the book if I want to see that movie, they were mistaken, thinking the book would not be as scary, and the book was way more scary than the movie was. But I found myself very interested in music very early on. I liked playing sports, but I was never that great at it. But I was really into playing soccer and baseball and basketball to a certain extent. So I was doing all that stuff all the time. But my older sister was taking piano lessons, and therefore I had to take piano lessons because I really wanted to. And I was jealous of her. And we had a piano in our house. And so it started with that. And then my mom, was a first grade school teacher, she had an acoustic guitar in our closet that had been kind of collecting dust, and it belonged to one of her teacher friends. And I kind of started to pick that up, around like, fifth grade, and was very interested in that. So I convinced my parents to let me start taking guitar lessons as well. So I was, starting my first bands like in sixth grade with like my buddies, like my friends who lived down the street. Somebody got a drum set, somebody got a bass and a bass amp. I played guitar. Nobody wanted to sing, so I stepped up. Not because I wanted to, but I did. And yeah, I mean, music is like kind of what I thought about all the time. But I liked other stuff too. I was really into like in the Ninja Turtles and Jurassic Park. I still am into Jurassic Park, and I think I'm still into the Ninja Turtles. Ghostbusters was my favorite movie of all time. It still is. And yeah, I found a way into kind of local music and off the radar music because of one of my friend's older brothers. And that older brother, his name is Ryan. He's the guy who had, patches on his backpack and shirts of bands that I didn't know, right? And because of being friends with his younger brother, we kind of had this thing where, yeah, we're playing in bands together, but the bands that we knew at the time were like, it was Nirvana and Metallica and stuff like that. And then because of this friend, we started to learn about the underground. And you had, obviously your ties with Victory Records and all that, but Victory Records being a Chicagoland label, there were a lot of bands that I was getting into when I was in middle school and high school. That was Strife and Snapcase and Earth Crisis to a certain extent. And I started finding out about these local shows and stuff like that. And next thing you knew, we're playing local shows. We're setting up shows in our friend's backyard. We're doing, $2 and $3 basement shows, and we are, trying to rent out rooms at the YMCA or at somebody's church's, basement rec room or whatever. So I kind of got into that stuff really early on. And as I got into that stuff, I stopped caring really about playing sports, and I kind of stopped caring about school too. Not that I hated school. I actually kind of liked doing creative things at school. I just stopped caring about the results of it. and
Sure.
and I went to school for music for a couple of years when Spitalfield signed a recording contract, and then I stopped going, and I haven't really cared about school since.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a lot there to pull apart, but talk to me about the, experience, like as you were starting to, play in bands, like put on shows, that aspect of you most likely bringing home things that your parents were not either prepared for or understanding. Like, I mean, your mom as a teacher probably had some understanding, obviously, of music and the creative arts and what have you. But, when you were bringing home people screaming music, there was probably some concern. Or did your parents just, allow it because they saw you were passionate about it?
My parents were pretty cool with what I was listening to. I mean, they certainly didn't like some of it. But I don't know, like, I think that, like, my mom, her older brother, my uncle, is the one who, gave me a Jimi Hendrix tape when I was in 3rd grade, right? So, I mean, there was like music in her house, and she did have a lot of 45 records in the basement and a lot of, you know what I mean? Like she was kind of into it. And then there were certain bands that she kind of liked too that I would show her. Mind you, she didn't love the heavier hardcore bands with all the screaming and stuff, which is fine. I mean, I get that, like I'm a parent now, and I'm like, I can't even imagine what like my boys are going to bring home when they start getting into like new music. So it's all good, but they were pretty tolerant. But also like one of my best friends who lived across the street and 3 doors over, same last name as me. We're not related. His name is Ben, and Ben was playing drums in my first band, and Ben was the one who was trying to like take on the business role like locally. He was the one getting into screen printing and trying to start a record label and ordering from catalogs. So like our friends in high school, we'd all pass around like a Revelation Records catalog like all day long and jot down the things we wanted to order. And then Ben would order them wholesale as if he was like a record store or something, which was hilarious because be like, oh yeah, we're getting 7 of these Texas is the Reason albums and 5 of this Inside Out EP, and like it was just like it was crazy how deep we got into stuff when we were really young.
Right. I love that experience of the catalog buying. And that's actually insanely smart because I think that most kids, at least my experience, and I know many of my peers, we would maybe go in together to, put on an order where it's like, my friends are buying some CDs and I'm buying some shirts or whatever, and we all put it together. But I love that idea of like the hometown distro of everybody getting like, all right, we're all getting a copy of the Texas is a Reason full length. Like, here we go.
Oh, totally. And then with the quote unquote overstock, Ben would, set up shop at some of the local shows with a few bins of albums and have them for sale, right? So, I mean, he was ahead of his time being a smart business guy, but also like again, really grateful that, his parents and my parents were kind of like oddly okay with like what we were doing. And like it's really funny now to think about my dad bringing things up to me like about like liability insurance and things like that, being like, you're putting on a show in the basement, what happens if this happens? And me being like, I don't know, Dad. And him being like, okay. And it's wild because now it's like I'm finding myself, in my early 40s here with the band, like, renewing my insurance policy for the band, being like, yep, I guess it is something you're supposed to have. You know what I mean? But it's just funny. It's just it's really a special time to be alive. And I'm grateful that they were down to let us kind of have a bit of a lengthy leash with what we were trying to do locally.
Absolutely. And did you feel, because clearly Chicago, as you said, with, Victory Records, but then all of the things that subsequently came out of it, whether it's Alkaline Trio, Fall Out Boy, I mean, the list could go on and on, Arm Angelus, obviously. um,
Yeah.
So did you feel like you guys were, a part of something as you started to, especially as Spitalfield, not your first band, started to play shows? Like, did you notice the stuff happening around you, or did it just feel like, well, this is cool and exciting, but, we can't put it in the context of anything?
No, we were feeling it happening around us because there was these like different pockets forming in the greater Chicagoland music scene, and the one that we were kind of a part of, had a few bands kind of making waves because like we were all playing the same types of shows all the time, and flyering at the same shows, the bigger shows at Metro or Fireside, like standing outside with the samplers and the flyers and stuff like that, trying to build stuff. But then as certain bands were starting to move, we were really blessed to kind of be a part of that. And there was I want to say this is like 2002. There's a show at I think St. Thomas Church in Naperville, and it's a co-headline. It's Rise Against in Spitalfield, and opening the show is Fall Out Boy. Okay. And you look at that flyer now and just there's so much to unpack, and it's not just because of who Rise Against became or who Fall Out Boy became or like what we were able to accomplish, but also the fact that we all knew each other because we'd all been in 5 or 6 other bands, you know what I mean, that had been playing together for the previous 4 years. So, seeing those things start to happen and bands start to, like, have fans that aren't just your friends, like, that was a big deal. And I think that, like, with every local scene, there's gonna be some competition, but there's also gonna be, like, a brotherhood of sorts. And you end up finding the bands that you become friends with where you try to book tours together and you're in it together. And then you have the other bands that you're kinda, like, all competing for the same opening slot for the national act that's coming through that you wanna you wanna open for. So, it it's interesting, but I do think I was feeling the energy. It was kind of unexplainable, but it was like lightning in a bottle, and as it started to happen and, you've got these other bands from Chicagoland too, uh, making big steps forward, like The Academy is, and a little earlier than that, Lucky Boys Confusion, and yeah, it felt cool. I mean, it felt very bizarre, honestly, to suddenly be in a 15-passenger van with a double axle trailer and being like 19, 20 years old and being like, I guess we're going for it. See you later, everything else. You know what I mean? Like, kind of wild. What kind of business model is that? Like, I don't know, but we were all in for it.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Like it's you're operating off of a feeling. You're just like, well, we we sold like $1,000 worth of merch. That'll probably sustain us for like 2 years, right?
Exactly. But also, specifically, like, Spitalfield, we each member of the band, like, or at least like originally, we were all in other bands too. And we played in hardcore bands and punk bands before that. And when I was really young, like, like 15, um, like, I was in this, like, more like thrash grind band called Landmine, and Landmine would play shows like Landmine was my entry point into playing at the Fireside, and I was really young. It was like I literally had a marching band thing on a Saturday because I was in marching band where I had to ask the band director, "Can we leave after halftime because we have a show to play in Chicago?" And they're like, "Okay." And me and the drummer of that band were both in marching band, so we're like, we got our plumes on and our capes and everything. We're getting in his dad's minivan. He's taking us down to the Fireside, like, with all of our gear jammed in the back of this minivan. And, we were playing all sorts of shows, but we got to seriously share the stage with, like, MK Ultra and Charles Bronson and bands like that. And when Los Crudos were first doing their farewell shows in fall of 1998, Martin from Los Crudos put Landmine on one of those farewell shows, and we played the most crowded I've ever seen the Fireside. And we're 15 years old up there playing three-piece thrash grind stuff, right? So it's like I was into all that stuff long before the Spitalfield thing started to work. And it's like the Landmine thing never really worked. We were just a local thing. It was just fun. Um, but when Spitalfield started getting like regional, like trading shows with regional bands that were also starting to draw and just doing those like weekend after weekend or spring break or summer, whatever, like that's when it started to feel like maybe we could do this for real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that I mean, mentioning a band like MK Ultra, it gets, 4 people in my collective audience excited about that, but I'm excited as well. But just like, I like that experience of what you're talking about, where it's like you've been able to, dabble in all of these different scenes because, like many people, as I'm sure you experienced, going to a Kudos show or, Olympus show, probably like maybe listen to Spitalfield at home, but they would be like, oh, I'd never be caught dead at a Spitalfield show or whatever. But it's like, why not? Like, if you like the music, like, go out. And I think now there's more openness to be able to bleed into all those different scenes. But like, I think it's a very unique experience, especially pre-internet, for a person like yourself to have that wide experience of all these different scenes, because you were seeing Food Not Bombs, but then you were also seeing just like a pop show or whatever, emo pop show with watching Braid or whatever.
Yeah, well, totally. And a lot of our like friends from that like local hardcore scene and everything else, like they've stayed friends and we still, see each other and communicate. And like we were, Spitalfield was playing, we were like closing out one of the nights here in Chicago of Taste of Randolph, which is one of the bigger street festivals that, has like a Q101 stage, and that's like the big alternative rock station here. And next thing you know, we've got all these old friends who were, kind of towards the back, who showed up to like show us some love and support. And it's like, oh, yep, these folks are like, we're like proud of each other still. You know what I mean? Like, while we're still at it, we're still doing it. Um, and our drummer, who's now more recently in the band, who joined around when we were first getting back together in 2023 for the 20-year anniversary of Remember Right Now. His name is Drew Brown. He's a lifelong friend. He was in that three-piece hardcore band I mentioned earlier, Landmine, with me. But our original drummer, JD, who had played pretty much every show up until that exact moment, who's really just like unavailable for touring and for, doing things anymore. Drew comes in, and Drew he's a great drummer, and he's a lifelong friend, and there's no one else I'd rather be doing it with than him. Drew's other band is Weekend Nachos. And when Weekend Nachos fans figure out that Drew's in Spitalfield, or when Spitalfield fans figure out that Drew's in Weekend Nachos, there's always that moment of like, huh. But I feel like, as you just described, there's a little bit of a like light bulb of like, oh, right, because these people all dabble in all these scenes. It's not like you're in one lane and one lane only,
Yeah. That is so sick. This is not the either line of questioning or bands that I thought you would mention, and it just makes me so happy because I think that it does give people the authorship of being like, well, yeah, we're all weirdos in small rooms, so like why not cross pollinate the scene in so many different directions if you want to,
Yeah, and why not? And honestly, like, because, as somebody who also loves like singer-songwriters and, you know, pop bands and all sorts of other things, it's like I I think if it's good, it's good. And the fact that I really used to love like a lot of that energy and raw passion and stuff, like that still matters to me. Like when I hear really big records right now that are kind of in the like heavier space or whatever, I'm still putting them up against the things that I loved before, not because of nostalgia, but because I'm looking for that energy and that passion to cut through, even if the production is better. It's like it's crazy how much production has changed from like what we were doing with originally like 4 tracks, and then like, oh my God, like when somebody actually ponied up however much per hour to go into a real studio, like, it's crazy what home recording has gotten to and what like being a producer means these days. So now I have a whole different set of, ideas and thoughts when it comes to judging production, but I'm still looking for that passion and looking for that energy and that honesty.
We have our friends at Rockabilia reminding you can get 10% off your entire order by using this promo code, 100 words or less, to buy your favorite hardcore, metal, rock, hip hop, whatever merch you're looking for. They have it, and it's all officially licensed. So that means the bands get paid. Everybody wins in this scenario. You get a high quality piece of merch. The company that has been doing this for 30 plus years continues to be in business and serve us awesome people that love music. They ship it from the Midwest here in the United States. It gets to you very quickly. They have amazing customer service. They also have really unique items. Like they can do, lunch boxes, thermoses, scarves. Like you will have fun if you go to rockabilia.com and then use that promo code 100 words or less. I've ordered from them a lot recently because my son is super into classic rock and we're getting a lot of merch from there. And that's great. I love to support that. So rockabilia.com. 100 words or less is the promo code. Go now.
What's the difference between DIY and doing it yourself? It's the difference between a part-time passion and a full-time business. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker. With a website that fits your unique vision, let your ideas flow with AI that guides you but keeps you in the driver's seat. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Go to Wix.com.
And when you once Spitalfield started to, tour and obviously put out your first record was Victory. I mean, those are exciting times for any band once they start to get out there. Did you take to tour like a duck to water, or was that a difficult experience as far as like, managing your energy, like not getting sick? Like how was your relationship with touring as you started to do it?
I liked it a lot. mainly because I felt like it was where I wanted to be and kind of where I needed to be like at that exact time because I was young. I didn't have all the responsibilities that I knew I'd eventually maybe have. And at the time I had like I still have a very supportive family, but at the time I had family and friends who were like kicking me out the door to be like, go do it. And I know that that's not the same for everybody else. So I was fortunate to have that kind of like push coming from my hometown and from my immediate like family and everything. And then also like I guess the hardest part about it was just the volume of it. But we didn't really know anything else yet. Like we didn't really know how crazy it was to try to be doing 175, 200 shows in a year, like, and how much that would uh, drain you and how much it would quickly put you in a position where you start to question things about like what's going on the business side behind all the work you're putting in on your side. So yeah, I mean, it forced us to grow up real quick, but it also made us a much tighter band. And I think Remember Right Now was like even though, I mean, we'd released music before that, of course, as a band, because we've been a band for almost 5 years at that point. But Remember Right Now was kind of that version of the, like, you have your whole life to make your first record. Like, that's kind of how that felt. That album was like written about what is about to happen. What are we leaving behind? What's the future hold? It's this like coming of age type feeling, which made sense based on our age and with the opportunity that was in front of us. But then albums on Victory, albums 2 and 3 were much more a response to touring a lot and seeing bands every night and touring with bands and the good times and the bad times associated with touring. Like anybody that's spent years on the road has had tragedy happen while they're on the road, and going through something like that, whether it's with your own band or your close friends or family members, it changes you the first time you can't be somewhere, and it changes you the first time you see somebody else go through something like that too, and I think that like that's all coupled with this like kind of being thrown into the fire for like what it means to have fans now and to be like dealing with people in line who want to meet you or take your photo or have you sign something. And like I was always very floored by that. So like even now, like I'm still like pretty excited when people want to talk to me about why music I've written like matters to them. Like that's still very special to me. But it is kind of nuts to think that you could go from those like basement shows and church shows and YMCA shows that I was describing earlier to like, big theaters and big clubs and, sometimes even bigger than that. And just be like, I don't know really how I got here and I don't know if I can totally explain it, but here I am.
Totally, yeah. It's like there does become that point of just like, why are you talking to me? Like, I mean, I'm excited that you're excited, but like I feel like I want to know more about you and how you arose to my band. You just start to really get in your own head about it, and then I know that many people have to preserve that sort of awe of people being excited to meet you, just because then if you get too far removed from it, then you're just like, whatever, who cares, man? And then you lose all focus of not what it is you're doing in the first place, but you just start to become a rock star cliche.
Yeah, and also something that I have thought about more now that I can like look back on it is like when I was 19 and 20, a lot of those fans were like 18 and 19, or 15 and 16. So it's like we really weren't that far apart in age. So now that the like nostalgic boom is on and a lot of these like doors have reopened for certain bands to get back out there, it's like when I reconnect with these people, I'm like still their peers. Like I still have a very similar like, like we're in a very similar part of our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. And speaking of the kind of business implications of things, even though you aren't describing it as such when you're, like putting on a show and getting paid $100 for it or whatever, were you leaned in on that for your band, or was that something that you viewed as kind of a necessary evil in order to kind of keep things going, and you wanted to remove yourself as much as possible from it?
No, it was me. I mean, I was kind of mom and dad for the band, and I was like, earlier on when we were self-booked and completely self-managed, like that was mostly through me. And then as we started to get opportunities with booking agents and management and stuff, I became like the point person for those agencies and management people. So I kind of always was surrounded by it, and I was obviously learning on the go. And like I'm glad that that was me, because when the band initially broke up and I wanted to keep making music and figure things out, I was glad that I had learned as much as I had. Even though the music landscape is always changing, and the discovery tools are always updating and all these other things, I still think that you learn so much just by diving in. And it's funny because the early versions of those like contacts with management and stuff like that was literally like pulling over to do a payphone and talk about the show from the night before. And, I can't even really imagine touring without smartphones, but that's what we were doing at first. And we would show up for our tours with like a giant 3-ring binder with all the MapQuest directions for the whole dang tour printed out with like 100 pages. Like, what are we doing? But again, you live and you learn, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, you and I are roughly around the same age. And so, I mean, you mentioning some of these things brings me back to, post-traumatic stress syndrome of just all of those situations of being like, all right, we've got 300 pages of MapQuest directions. And then the moment that you have to, a show gets changed, you're like, okay, I guess we're going to a Kinko's and trying to steal copies for the rest of the tour.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure, I mean, we don't need to belabor the point, but, Victory Records obviously is an important part to many people's musical trajectories as well as your own for signing them. And they clearly have a lot of blemishes in their entire, perspective. I'm sure just because, Tony is a very bombastic character and always had, interesting interactions with his bands, both good and bad. I'm sure you have, fun/funny stories in regards to the way that you guys interacted with Victory as a whole. Is there anything that sticks out from your, time putting out records on Victory that was like, oh man, like that was a wild marketing idea or a wild interaction? Not looking for you to talk crap, but just something funny that's, was there any Snapcase whoopee cushion ideas that came your direction?
Right. We didn't have the whoopee cushions, but what what it was early on was that we released this EP in the fall of 2002 called the Cloak and Dagger Club EP, and it was a 5-song EP that our friends here in Chicagoland helped us release. It was called Sinister Label, and we did a record release show for that at Metro, and we were starting to really develop like a pretty strong local fan base. And what we did with that EP was we got, a manila envelope, or we got like 15 of them. And we made our own bio. We had a friend take a press photo. We, wrote little bullet points of some of our, what we thought were little wins for us with like things we'd accomplished. And we put that EP in there and we sent it to like 12 or 13 labels that we loved. And to be on that list of labels, you just had to have put out some music that we were into. And then we found the address on the back of those CDs and we sent those out. And Victory was, of course, on that list. I mean, we didn't really have any expectations that a label like Victory would even listen to us. But being in Chicagoland, that gave us maybe a little extra attention. And we heard back from like 7 of those labels, which blew my mind. And then out of those 7, like 4 of them took us kind of seriously. And then we were down to a couple that we were talking to and figuring it out. And Victory really kind of like at the time really laid out the red carpet being like, we don't have, a Chicago band like you guys. We don't have a lot of Chicago bands at all. You guys are right here. You could develop a relationship with everybody who works here. Like, let's do this. And they got us so amped up because now I'm thinking in my brain about, 5 years younger me holding up that, California Takeover CD, you know what I mean? With with
Yeah.
Strife and Earth Crisis and Snapcase, and thinking about those records and how much they mattered to me, and then being like, this label is interested. And of course there was like the Thursday thing, and we had played like a rec center show with Thursday when they were touring through, before their Full Collapse had come out. They had samplers for it. And I had bonded a little bit with some of those guys about the like New Jersey hardcore thrash bands that they were into, because I saw like on their backpacks, I saw like a Devola patch and an iRobot patch, and I was like, oh, I love those bands, and we were talking about it. And it was like, it was cool. I'm like, okay, well, Thursday's on this label, and like obviously Taking Back Sunday were just about to explode. And we were just like, this has got to be it. Like, this has got to be the move. And sure enough, we then realized like where we were living, we had like an apartment that 3 out of the 4 members lived at. Turned out that like once we actually looked into it, we were like less than a mile from the Victory Records headquarters. And we're like, this is meant to be. We're doing this. So once we signed to Victory, there was a lot of truth to what I said about us being a Chicagoland band and us having access. Like, we became really good friends with a lot of people who worked there, because we'd see them all the time,
Sure.
out and about at shows, but also like dropping into the office and stuff. And I think that worked for us and against us, because it worked for us because we had friendships there, and it worked against us because in a way, business is business, right? And once you start to get personal with it, it can get a little ugly, right? And when you ask about Tony, it's like, yeah, I'm not really at this point, until like someone wants to make a documentary, like I'm not really out here just sharing all the stories left and right, because there's so many of them and they're so layered, and some of them are so frustrating and some of them are really funny. But I'll say that the thing about Tony that kind of happened time and time again was you just didn't know which version of him you were about to get. And no matter what you were talking to him about, there was a chance that you were going to get the opposite version of Tony than you were expecting. So
Sure.
if you wanted to talk to Tony about business stuff, suddenly he might be, your Uncle Tony who's offended that you are trying to talk numbers and money. And then if you come to him on the personal note about personal things going on, like with the band or ideas or thoughts, then he gets all business on you and pulls out the numbers and says you're not grateful. So you just didn't know what you were going to get. And I had a lot of like exciting conversations with Tony, and I had some really, really hard conversations with Tony. And when I was out there, at age 20, 21, trying to communicate with someone like that who doesn't like barriers. Like, Tony didn't like managers. He didn't like agents, which is crazy because he needed those things for his bands to succeed. But it was like, you just didn't know what was satisfactory to him, or what was gonna like pump him up in a positive way to make a big push for something and have him get aggressive on the marketing side, or what was gonna make him threaten to, shelve you. You just didn't know what you were gonna walk into at any given moment.
This company I love so much. It gets my full-throated recommendation, and that is evilgreed.net. They are an amazing heavy music merchandise purveyor. So they sell vinyl, they sell shirts, they sell a lot of different things, all in one convenient place through a specific point of view. Like I said, heavy music merchandise. So if you listen to this show, I guarantee you will love what they're offering. Whether it's Cave In, whether it's stuff that Run for Cover is releasing, like the Jason Molina tribute comp, or whether it is the new X Weapon X EP, which is spectacular, by the way, for us straight edge old people or straight edge young people, just straight edge people in general. But Evil Greed is based in Berlin, Germany, and they ship worldwide, and the shipping rates to us here in the United States are very advantageous. I guarantee you will have so much fun going to evilgreed.net, looking at all of their stuff. They have exclusive colors of vinyl. They have limited items that you will not be able to find anyplace else. And that is why I love evilgreed.net. So go to the site, shop around, and order to your heart's content. Go. I wanted to drill down on your second full length, just in regards to, once you guys got out there and started to establish yourself on the road. And like you said, you have your whole life to prepare for the first full length, and then you have to, write your second one within 18 months on the road.
Right.
And I know you guys chose to work with Ed Rose. And I think, if memory serves me right, people were looking at that record just from a critical perspective, being like, oh, the classic sophomore slump or whatever. Like, I mean, I could just be completely misremembering this, but people were just like maybe a little lukewarm in comparison to the first full length. did you, I guess, feel any of that sort of those cliches being echoed back to you, or were you guys, just like head down and be like, well, that doesn't matter because we're still, getting out there and working hard?
Yeah, it was no, we definitely felt it. It was really it was really emotionally difficult. It was emotionally difficult because we thought we had made a better record, and we thought we made a more energetic, like, representation of like who we were after touring and performing and bringing that some of that rawness and that energy, a little less of the slick production, a little more of some of the bands that, like, we had loved, because we worked with Ed because we loved Get Up Kids, we loved Casket Lottery, we loved Coalesce. Like, there was all these bands that Ed had done that we were like, we were gonna lose our minds if he said yes to producing the record. And we were really happy with it too. Like, we not only had we like written it primarily on the road and felt this like chemistry together that we had not felt before, but the recording process was the first time that we had spent time away from Chicagoland to record. Like, we went to record at Black Lodge, which is, it's a little town of Eudora, Kansas, where you're staying in an apartment above the studio. And we did that in 2 different legs, like a week and a half each. And we're like almost like living in an apartment together and recording a record and feeling excitement because the first record had done like okay. And like, it was like, we had some fans now, we had some momentum, we had new management, we had, great booking agent. And like, I don't know, we were feeling the energy and the love going into it. And, yeah, there was definitely some folks that I think were like taken aback, looking for more of that like slick pop stuff they'd heard on the first one and didn't like it. But I will say this, it sold pretty well, even though some of the like message boards and stuff were, divided. It actually sold pretty darn well. And then also it turned into a record that years later, some of those people who didn't like it at first came around to it. And they were kind of like, that was the record that got away, and I can't believe I didn't like it. And I'm thinking like, well, I get it. Like, to what you and I were talking about at the very beginning of this podcast. It's like, I get that. And maybe we were making a record for people who were our age and older, not for the younger kids. I don't know what we were doing really, but in the end, it got some really good scores and some high praise from some publications that like reminded us that it was a good record, or at least that someone thought it was a good record.
Sure.
And there's still songs from that record that are, fan favorites live. And, we're kind of celebrating 20 years of that record this year. We're not doing a full tour on it because, to your point, it was not the fan favorite record that Remember Right Now was. And we were not going to try to like force the issue of doing a full run, but we are going to announce a show and a kind of a special thing that people can participate in if they want to share some memories from that era, that album, and do a couple fun things with it. So I do love that record. Like, I would say, if I was forced to say what my favorite collection of songs were that we did as a whole, it'd be that album.
That's awesome. Yeah. And truthfully, like, no matter what art you're putting out in the world, 2 things can change over time: the people's reaction to it and then your perspective on it. And those are 2 things that, are truly the most meaningful, even though, bands at the time when they're releasing records that maybe don't hit in the way that they do, that changes their trajectory, but you still have the perspective on it once you grow older.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's a business convo for another time, but we also, going into that record and after it was released and we were like, kind of at our height of like touring at a high level, there were a handful of bigger labels who were trying to get us off of Victory. And that was a really crazy time for me emotionally and mentally and even physically, because we were touring so hard on the physical front and we were so proud of that record, but so, like, I don't know, disheartened by some of the response to it. All that was happening. Meanwhile, there's these, big, I'll just say major type labels that were showing up to the shows in New York and LA and were asking what's going on and who were putting in calls to Tony. And those deals never got done. And I always wonder, like, what would have happened if album 3 had been off of Victory, and we had worked with, a different type of team who saw a different path for us. So that's never like what should have happened, but it's always like what could have happened. And that's kind of like a haunting feeling that I've had to deal with for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do. It's always especially to your point, when you feel close, that like something was, imminent, and for one reason or another, it didn't happen. That's when you're just like, man, I would love to, hypothetically go to that road to see what the results would have been.
That's right. And I've seen really great bands with cool records get shelved on majors or not pan out, and I've seen bands I never thought would make it. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
anything could have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you started to, transition out of Spitalfield in regards to, touring less and figuring out like what was next in your proverbial life, did you, was that a weird time kind of transitioning from being like Mark from Spitalfield, like how many people know all the people in bands as, was that a difficult time, or was that exciting for you to kind of experience life not being on the road and not having to worry about your creative output from a like timetable perspective?
Yeah, I think at first I was pretty bummed because like we really didn't break up because we were tired of touring or making music together. Like we really did like wave a white flag more so on like the situation we were in, which was kind of we were feeling very trapped. Because after doing album 3 and not really feeling the push behind it and knowing about the other places that were courting us and those deals not happening and then wondering what's going on and how can it be both of these things at the same time. Like we were really exhausted. And I when I say what's funny, I don't mean like haha funny, because it's not really haha funny, but what's funny looking back on it is that when we broke up I was like 24 years old, and now if I had been given that chance again I'd say don't stop. Like, don't worry about the label anymore. Don't worry about this. Just put out another record and something's going to happen and you're going to make a move. Like something will work itself out here. But at the time, it felt like the ceiling was falling on us, and maybe that's also because we had been a band since 1998. And even though we were just kids, I think the fact that we had, 4 or 5 years of, like, being a local band before we signed to Victory, and then we had that next wave of 4 or 5 years, like, I think that's kind of why we were so, you know, bummed and exhausted. But when the band first ended, we went out with a bang because we did do, like, not super thorough, but we did do a US farewell tour and a week in the UK, and the final show from that tour was really special and powerful for me, and when it was all over, I did kind of feel lost. Like, I was just kinda like, I know I wanna make music still. I know this isn't the end for me, but it did feel like everything that I had been thinking about and working on for the last decade was over. Um, and, by our own doing, no less. I mean, it was our choice to break up.
Sure.
Um, and and that was tough. So first thing I did was kinda just do a 180. Like, I, picked up, like, I got rid of some of the guitars that I had had for so long, sold them to folks off Craigslist. Like, I didn't even try to go the route of like, "Hey, if you want this Les Paul Studio that recorded Remember Right Now," like, I didn't do anything like that. I was just like selling gear to randoms on Craigslist and then buying things that I hadn't really gotten into before. Like, I got a Strat and I got like a cool semi hollow. I did have one of those before, but like, and I started doing music that sounded nothing like Spitalfield, and it felt good at first, just as a departure and as a way to establish like, here I am as Mark Rose. It's not just, the band, but I also understood if I didn't say Mark Rose from Spitalfield, then literally nobody know who I was. So, I did do some solo touring saying Mark Rose from Spitalfield, and I would play a couple of those old songs, either solo with a band or just me in an acoustic or whatever. And I never shied away from that. I just was pushing myself forward with a different genre and really trying to, pivot. And on one level, it worked because I did get to do some decent amount of touring solo over the years, and I was like earning a decent amount where I could like, do music kind of full time, and like that was kind of amazing. But it never really caught. It wasn't like the Mark Rose Experience project like took off, and people were like, "Oh, did you know it used to be in an emo band?" It's like, no, being in an emo band was like kind of always what people had said about me. So yeah, it was tricky.
Sure, absolutely. And I wanted to talk about downright because I'm giving you the flowers where, in my opinion, they are deserved in regards to being way ahead of the curve in regards to the way. I mean, you look at Cameo and everything that exists now for
Hmm.
people being able to directly interact with their artists or their favorite artists, and then be able to, help supplement their income by getting something awesome in return. Um,
Yeah.
not forcing you to go through the origin story of that, but you and Bob Nana, and I know another co-founder were able to found that company, but that's a whole different world in regards to technology and venture capitalists and all of the
Hmm.
things that are probably similar to starting a band, but in many respects are definitely a whole different ball of wax. Did you, I guess, feel very different as you were kind of starting to get downright off the ground and start to get attention for that? Or did it feel very similar to, the band trajectory?
It felt different, but it felt good. It felt good because Bob and I truly started like coming up with this idea as something for the two of us. Like that's what we were thinking was like, hey, like between albums, between tours, what can we do to make some money doing something that we're good at, that we think is like fun, which is writing songs, and do something special for your fans. And, Max Bemis would Say Anything, he had done his like song shop, and what we saw from that was like there's an interest in that kind of thing, but what we didn't see was like a platform or a community. We saw that as more of like an individual with a store, right? So we thought, well, what if we do something, we build something for like the two of us and kind of put ourselves out there in a similar way, but with more structure, an actual transaction where there's expectations, there's, turnaround times, there's different production levels, and, and that's it. Like, it's kind of like if a fan wants you to do something quick and fun for a 1 minute Valentine, cool. If they want to go bigger with a studio production for a first dance at their wedding, like amazing. Like we were thinking just kind of like, what can we do to make money in music? Streaming's not paying anything. Record sales are starting to go away. And like streaming really wasn't a thing yet, to be honest. I just mean like digital, like it was just, it was feeling empty kind of. And yeah, so we kind of like went out for, sushi and beers and talked about that concept, and the next day it was like, yeah, that thing we talked about, I think we should do that. And we didn't have a name for it yet. But also we were thinking, what if it wasn't just you and me? What if it was like a handful of artists that we're close to that have fans that we've toured with? And we made it a little bit more like a curated community. So it started there. Like when we launched the site, and the third co-founder at the time, that's Dan Reed. He was a technology guy. So we kind of had, okay, we got Mark and Bob on the music side and the idea side, and we got Dan on like the knows how to code a website side, right? And we came up with a way to just use me and Bob as the test, and we built profiles for us. We got, we came up with the name, we got the domain, registered the business, all that stuff. And when we went live, which was like around Valentine's Day, 2013, um, we then immediately brought in like, 5 or 6 more artists. And those first ones in was like Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids, Berwanger from Anniversary, William Beckett from The Academy Is, Steve from Punchline. It was people like that we just like had spent time with, all over the country and world, that we could say on a personal note, hey, do you want to try this? And if you have issues, we want to learn from it, and you can just talk to us. Because that's the hard thing, I think, about adopting anything, is that you feel like you're kind of blindly putting yourself out there. And people are protective. of course their music, but of their the way people see them and their brand and all those things. And you didn't want it to look and feel like a cash grab. You wanted it to look and feel like something cool and special. And that's kind of like what Downright was. And then over the years, it evolved. And as it started to pick up steam and more artists were, getting involved and more fans were commissioning artists and artists were making real money, that's when we were like, this thing needs to be built like an engine to scale up. So we did go through different iterations, like you mentioned, like people investing in it and the different pieces of technology to go with that. And now we're like, in like essentially V3, which may as well be V5, but like Bob and I are still here. We still care, and artists have still earned, over $1 million using Downright. And yeah, things like Cameo have kind of come and kind of gone, and things like Patreon are obviously, incredible tools. And we've seen things like Kickstarter and, GoFundMe and, Indiegogo, I think it was called. And we were kind of like, you know what? We're kind of all these things, but really hyper focused on creating music. And we still think there's a great space for it, and that's why we're not giving up on it, and we're kind of behind the scenes, like rebuilding to adapt to the current music landscape. So Downright is still something that I'm passionate about, and the difference between trying to like make a band happen and make Downright happen was that Downright really, other than occasional trip to Seattle for technology or to New York for a meeting, it was done remote. It was done from home. It was something you could wake up and work on and then put down and move on. Whereas the band, you felt like you were always in it, especially when you were touring.
Right. Absolutely. And sensibly bringing us to, the last couple of things I was going to pick your brain on, for the fact that, like you said, Spitalfield exists in a world now where you guys are able to go out for short bursts at a time, whether it's, hey, Anne Boleyn is celebrating an anniversary, so they asked us for, a week and a half worth of shows. And bands can continue to do that, like you said, with that sort of nostalgic wave that happens, every 5 to 10 years based off of a record's release. Putting out a new EP is clearly a statement. And did you ultimately feel, I guess, compelled to do that to show the fact that you were still engaged with this band as opposed to just using it as a nostalgia vehicle, which is not, I'm not besmirching that, but just kind of, was that important for you to obviously get it out there?
Well, it was super, super special and important to create it and release it. It was nerve-wracking also. But I'll say that when we first were getting the interest in doing the 2023 20-year anniversary tour, and those, somehow was coming together and looking good and fun and all this stuff, I told the guys, like, hey, I don't really want to talk about being a band again. I want to just take this all in and enjoy it because we don't know when we'll get to do this again. And these people are here to like, reconnect and hear these songs again. And we're all in different places in our lives. And it's like too easy in a way to get like really caught up in it all, right? To be like, oh man, we're back. Cause I think that's like, it's reactionary. And I emotionally would not be prepared to just from a reaction standpoint, say we're a band again. So when we were doing that like full year of touring, which ended up being 50 cities, which was nuts. When it was kind of winding down, we were like, should we take on a few more opportunities? So we're like, yeah, we extended a little bit in early 2024 to do some stuff in Canada because we hadn't done that yet. And then our agent was like, there's more opportunities here that are asking about you guys. Like, do you want to keep going? And it was kind of an overwhelming yes from everybody. But then it was like, but if we say yes to this, then we got to start talking about what it is to be a band again, because we can't just keep doing, roll ourselves out there for pure nostalgia and then, that's it. It was like, if we're going to like keep playing shows and we're going to like talk about the structure of how we do this and talk about our schedules and how we can make this kind of thing work, then I want to take it more seriously. And we started to. And then the topic of like new music came up, and I was like, really excited about it, but also nervous because it had been so long since the band had released music that I was worried about putting something out that would be, I don't know, really overlooked or panned or also like a letdown. Like when you have like a small but mighty fan base, the last thing you want to do is let them down. and I knew that if we were going to make new music, it had to be for us first, but then the reality would set in about, other people hearing it. So as we, started the like new version of like demoing and rehearsing and jamming out these ideas, and it's new because we're in a different place and time, and we were able to demo at a high level, like remotely, and to share ideas quicker and not always have to be in the same space and all that. As these demos were coming together and we started to build the team of how we were going to record it, and we got Sean O'Keefe on board to mix it, it started to feel very real, and I was getting real excited and real nervous. And yeah, to your point, it was like making a statement to say, hey, we're back. Like we are back. And what that means, like that's still kind of TBD, because I don't know how long this opportunity stays here and how long people care. But the fact that there's still listeners, and there's monthly listeners, and there's social followers and people at shows who want to talk to you about what the music means to them, like that keeps me going. That keeps me excited to keep making music. And, we're just about not even a month into this, EP finally being out. And so far it's been like overwhelmingly positive.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. And the last thing I'll bring up is the idea that, I mean, now, like you mentioned, you're a father and you have this wide experience within the context of music to pull from, and like, DIY and all of these different scenes that you've been exposed to. And how does that, or how do you think that informs, you as a parent? Do you, do you feel more permissive about the stuff that your kids do get into, where it's like, oh yes, like if they brought home Insane Clown Posse, you'd at least be aware of it or whatever? How do you think, how does that kind of bounce around your brain?
Well, right now there's nothing more exciting to me than seeing the boys kind of light up when music is playing. And I've got two boys, 3.5 and 1. So like I'm in the thick of it right now. They don't really know anything about new music yet. Like the only new music they know is honestly Daddy's new music, which is so cute. And when my 3.5-year-old says the name of my band, it like, I don't know. It's so wild to hear that. But I think that where I'm at with it is I want them to be at least given the opportunity, to be around music. And right now it's all like kids music stuff, right? It's like there's so many spots in and around Chicagoland to find where they're doing kids concerts and stuff. And when I look around and see a bunch of kids jumping around and a bunch of parents sitting back, at 10:30 a.m., like either with a Bloody Mary or or an NA seltzer, like I'm like, all right, I'm in the right place to get this started, whatever that means. And I hope they have a bunch of different interests. Like it's being a parent is terrifying because you're so, afraid, and, you're responsible for them and for what's going to happen and all these things. But then I can think back to your point, the DIY stuff and the way I kind of got myself into things and discovered things. I just want to be open-minded to, what they are interested in. And of course, if they tell me they're ready to get in a 15-passenger van when they're, the summer of their senior year of high school, I might say, I don't think so, but maybe they'll still do it, and maybe I'll be okay with it.
Kudos to Mark Rose for joining on this awesome journey that is this podcast, and I appreciate his time. Also, a huge shout out to his publicist, an old friend of mine, Tim. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your pitches, and was happy to make this happen. Next week, I have Aaron Dahlbeck from Bane, Be Well, Only Crime. It is actually a crime. When this idea got brought to me, I was like, you know what? I have never had anybody from Bane on my, 13 some odd years of doing this podcast. And that's really, really bad, because Bane is an incredibly important band, not only to the hardcore scene, me personally. And I was able to rectify that mistake. And Aaron and I have been friendly with each other for, 10 some odd years. He actually married a good friend of mine, and we had a great conversation, and it was really cool. So that's what we do next week. Aaron Dahlbeck from Bane. Until then, please be safe, everybody.
It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker with a website that fits your unique vision and drives you towards your goals. Let your ideas flow with AI tools that guide you, but give you full control and flexibility. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. Get everything you need to turn your part-time passion into a full-time business. Go to Wix.com.